There weren't many customers in the store at that time, so the salespeople could finally breathe freely and go about their business. Irina and Lena had been friends for a long time and worked the same shift together. "Irish, look, you again staring," said Lena suddenly, smiling understandingly. Irina immediately perked up and quickly found with her eyes a familiar figure. A young guy with glasses stood at the entrance and watched her every move. He had recently moved into their neighborhood and came in for groceries every day. "Lenusia, this is my cherished chance." Ira smiled and fixed her bangs. "He's not your type. You don't like glasses, and he's not like your Vadic's ex," objected Lena, who knew almost everything about her friend's private life. "No way this Vadic. From his muscles of use with a gulkin nose. One dead on me hung up and was so. But he's a good man, you're right," Ira said, and the friends laughed understandingly. And the guy in glasses, meanwhile, embarrassed by the friends laughing throughout the store, went outside. "Did he leave? No way, it can't be. Every day he comes to me." An alarming thought flashed in Irina's head. She knew that the guy was not local, and by the amount of money he used to buy, the girl concluded that he was rich. His wallet was always full of money, and Irina, who had been working as a saleswoman for many years, had a keen eye for such things. The rest of the working day passed nervously for Irina. Saleswoman now and then throwing a glance at the visitors, looking for a guy, which she already considered her own in absentia. The thing was that Irina grew up in a poor family, and like no one else knew the value of money. There was no father, and her mother, to give her daughter everything she needed, had to work 2 jobs without normal sleep and rest. Therefore, having such an example in front of her eyes, Irina wanted to break into the people and find a groom, behind whom she would be like behind a stone wall and could indulge all her whims. Finally, the working day came to an end, and having handed over the cash register, Irina rushed to the exit. It was already evening, but before darkness was still a few hours. The saleswoman looked around and was happy to see a guy in glasses who came to her with a bouquet. "Hello, and this is for you," said the bespectacled man and handed Irina a bouquet of roses. From surprise, the girl was embarrassed and blushed to the roots of her hair. The guy also behaved hesitantly, shuffling from foot to foot and looking hopefully into Irina's eyes. "So are we going to stand there like this, or maybe go somewhere?" asked finally Irina, to whom these glances seemed quite funny. Yes, of course. We can have dinner at the cafe around the corner. They say they make excellent pizza," suggested the guy, and, having gathered courage, took Irina's hand. In the cozy atmosphere of the cafe, the young people talked and got acquainted. As it turned out, the mysterious suitor Irina called Artem. Despite his young age, he already had his own business related to logistics and cargo transportation. Artem was brought up by his grandfather because his parents died when he was not even 5 years old. They then, caught in a violent storm, crashed on a helicopter in the mountains. Unnoticeably, in conversation, the young people switched to you, and it became much easier to communicate. Artem was very nice and did not look boring, as he seemed from the outside. After dinner, they went for a walk in the park. Artem held Irina's hand during the walk, as if afraid to lose it. "Do you always get acquainted like this? Well, come to the store and all that," Ira asked in a playful tone. "No, not always. I wanted to say that I met like this for the first time." Artem hesitated, confused in his own words. "Oh, come on, I was joking. Do not take everything so literally," said Irina, and smiling, looked at the clock. The time was already quite late and the girl was going home. Artem, as a true gentleman, escorted Irina to the front door of her house and, kissing her goodbye on the cheek, took her promise to see her again tomorrow. The next day, her friend Lena, burning with impatience, first of all, asked her friend, "How did it go? Did you guess with the choice, Irish? I met Vadim yesterday. He was asking about you with such interest." "Oh, it's all right, Len. He's a good guy with a lot of money in his pocket. So he's an enviable groom, and Vadim is a pumped-up beggar. Only losses from him. But Artyom is another matter, generous and caring. I'm so happy for you, my friend. At least, don't forget to invite him to the wedding. I know you, Lena said ironically. What kind of wedding? We went on a date once. Maybe he won't invite her again. You never know. Didn't like her or something else. Ira replied, realizing deep down that it wasn't true. In relations with men, she was already quite experienced and was able to read their views. Irina even had a child out of wedlock from a biker, the existence of which even her friend Lena did not know. So she was not going to let Artyom go so easily. Her expectations were not deceived, and the guy with glasses came to her after work, as promised. And again there were flowers, gifts, and dinner at a restaurant. Gradually, Ira got used to the role of a rich businessman's girlfriend and began to behave much more confidently. Since then, and so it happened that young people began to spend more and more time together. Artyom fell in love with Irina without memory, and she felt about her wealthy suitor rather dependence, due to his money than something more. Now for Ira, the idea of marriage did not seem so fantastic as at the beginning of their acquaintance. And for everyone around them, she and Artyom looked like a real loving couple. Having received a proposal of marriage, Irina hesitated for a short time and happily gave her consent. And when the cherished date of marriage was already known, the girl began to prepare for the wedding, ordered a beautiful dress from the atelier, and picked it up in the jewelry shop suitable for him jewelry. Irina, literally floating in the clouds of happiness, waiting for the day when she will become a wife for Artyom. But before the wedding, a former suitor Vadim caught up with her at the exit of the store. Breathing the smell of yesterday's alcoholic libations, the guy said in a low voice, "Iron, I missed you. We haven't seen each other for so long. Let's start all over again. Give me another chance. Vadik, go to hell. Tell me, do you have a conscience? I'm getting married, in case you didn't know," Ira stated categorically. "Oh, so that's how you are then? All right, you get married, and then I'll tell you about your son." "You asshole. Even Lenka doesn't know about it. I met her after I gave birth to Vanya. That's mean, Vadik?" "Yeah, it's mean. It's mean to keep your son in an orphanage and visit him on holidays. Does it sting?" "The same thing," Vadim replied whip-smartly, rejoicing at the effect of his words. But Ira already felt guilty in front of her son, every time looking into his hurt eyes. The girl did not want Vanya to become a participant in the scandal associated with the wedding, so looking into the eyes of Vadim, she realized what he needed. After spending the night with her ex-boyfriend in the motel, Irina, with a sense of accomplishment, as if nothing had happened, called Artyom in the morning, telling him words of love. As a farewell, Vadim took all the cash from her, asking, "Yours, I take it, is a rich man. Well, then you will pay me off. And at the same time, I'll be your lover. You've got a lot of nerve though, you'd better get a job. At a construction site, or as a loader in a store, if your head's not working." "No, Arka, I have a good head. That's why I don't want to work. From work, they say it horses die," Vadim replied, smugly smirking. So, at the cost of lies, cheating, and deceit, Irina managed to keep everything secret, and the desired wedding took place. Although the wedding was a lavish affair, there were relatively few guests. The newlyweds had few relatives from both sides, so the celebration was attended mainly by close acquaintances and friends. Artyom's grandfather, Afanasy Trofimych, did not like his grandson's bride at once, but the old man did not oppose his will, respecting the feelings and worries of the boy. Even before Artyom met Irina, Trofimych asked him to pay attention to their maid, the orphan Masha. "Trust my experience, grandson. You'll be with her as if you were at Christ's side. She's a nice girl. From the village, again, city life is not spoiled. She was my good acquaintance neighbor in the village," said the old man, for whom the happiness of the only grandson was above all. But Artyom only waved away embarrassedly, saying that he would figure it all out himself. Perhaps then with Masha would have something, and they would have succeeded. But as a sin, Artyom met with Irina, who immediately captured his heart. The solution, strange as it may seem, was suggested to Irina by the clever Vadim when they were resting in a motel after another bed fight. Listen, and let's take everything under ourselves. Well, the state there, business, inheritance, and Vadim and grandfather Afonia, who will give us such money voluntarily? Irina asked in surprise. And we will not ask. We'll get rid of them all, and that's the end of it. I've already thought out some details. In general, if you want, you can do everything cleanly, Vadim said, rubbing his hands. Irina at first hesitated, but then agreed, seeing in Vadim's words a benefit for herself. Cunning lovers did not know that the record of their conversation was already on the table at Afanasy Trofimych, which the surveillance service has long prepared data on the infidelity of his daughter-in-law. Oh, so that's how you sing? Ungrateful wretch. Well, we'll see whose will take it, said the old man, having listened to the whole conversation from beginning to end. Then, calling Artem to him, he poured him some tea and turned on the tape. The old man had told his grandson about his wife's infidelity before, but he only waved it off, writing it off as the old man's excessive suspicion. But after listening to the proposed tape, Artem turned pale and changed his face. Tears came to his eyes, and it took a lot of effort for the guy to pull himself together and not cry. Such a betrayal on the part of Irina, Artem certainly did not expect. Therefore, it was such a strong blow for him. Then, coming to his senses, the guy talked with Afanasy Trofimovich's plan of further action. Artem, together with his grandfather, after a short deliberation, decided to strike a warning blow and prepare an imaginary assassination attempt. With the help of the old man's acquaintances, they found the executor, who was to go to Irina. Not expecting such good luck, wife together with her lover, happily rubbing their hands. Not in vain, they say, on the catcher and the beast runs, said Vadim, who, after a conversation with the executor, was satisfied with his candidacy and handed over the money. And the next day, the fake killer, with the help of the latest developments, imitated Artyom's death. For all acquaintances who did not know about the secret plan of the old man and his grandson, it was a real shock. Especially longed for the maid Masha, who in her heart loved Artem and dreamed that someday they would live together. Only one Irina was not sincerely grieving, who put on a mask of grief and mourning, pretended to be an inconsolable widow. My God, Artyomishka, how could it be so? Who did you cross? You've never hurt a fly in your whole life. And now you've left me alone, Ira said, trying to play her role to the end. Before the funeral, she put her husband's personal belongings in the coffin, when Artem's body was brought home for half an hour. After thinking for a second or two, the imaginary widow added a cell phone to the belongings. Everything is yours with you, Artyomishka. Sleep well, my dear. Directly at the funeral itself, Irina refused to attend, referring to a strong indisposition caused by nervous shock after the death of his spouse. Afanasy Trofimovich understandably pressed his lips and barely restrained himself from telling his daughter-in-law everything he thought about her. Finally, the funeral procession left and Irina sighed more freely. And with the onset of darkness, she furtively at night called Vadim, who listened to her say, "Well, how did it go? Did you do well with the role? Well and good. It is necessary now for the old man to take and heart attack him to organize." Irina, not knowing that their plans have long been known, happily cooed with her lover, discussing joint plans for the future. Going to bed, the girl thought that she would wake up with a new free life. The morning began as usual. Putting on a mask of grief, Irina began to manage in Artem's office, going through business papers. Suddenly, her smartphone vibrated, announcing a video call. Without looking at who was calling, Irina pressed the button to accept the call. At the same moment, on the screen appeared a smiling Artyom, who simply and offhandedly asked, "Well, wife, how are you?" Irina, gulping for air like a fish thrown ashore, lost her senses at the same moment. She was brought to consciousness by the police, who were in the yard with Artem. Vadim, as the most dangerous member of the gang, was arrested a little earlier, and he was already sitting in the patrol car with his hands bound with bracelets. "Now you'll have time to talk to each other," Afanasy Trofimich whispered when the arrested Irina was seated next to Vadim. The investigation went quickly thanks to the confession and the extensive legal framework. Having received a sentence, Irina and Vadim for a long time left their hometown and the people to whom they wished so many bad things. But when the former spouse was convicted, the desired relief Artem did not get. The guy was very sorry for little Vanechka, Irina's son. After consulting with Afanasy Trofimich, the guy decided to adopt the boy. "You're doing a good thing, grandson." The boy had already suffered a lot from his cuckoo mother for all this time, approved grandfather Afonia. So, a month later, a little boy appeared in Artem's house. At first, Venya asked where his mother was, and then he reached for the maid Masha, who immediately fell in love with him. The girl herself was an orphan and understood how hard it was for the boy in the orphanage. Watching Masha and how she takes care of a boy who is not her own, Artem involuntarily experiences respect for the fragile girl. Now the guy saw in Maria something that before simply did not notice. The girl was a hardworking and caring hostess, and unlike Irina, she was not interested in money. Masha every day walked with Venya in the park, and one day Artem decided to join them. That day they spent unforgettable, visiting children's attractions and eating enough ice cream. "Well, I told you, don't miss your chance," Grandpa Afonia said to Artem furtively when the happy trio returned home. Since that day, Artem and Masha began to spend all their free time together with the foster boy, unwillingly getting closer and closer. Of course, love and mutual feelings were not born in one day, and passed not 1 month, until Artem realized that he could not see his life without Masha. 6 months later, the young people played a wedding, to the delight of Venya and Afanasy Trofimich. Little Venya now calls Masha and Artem his parents, and Irina, who always did not care about him, prefers not to remember anymore. Moreover, his parents promised him a brother and sister, which means that soon he will have someone to play with and enjoy a carefree, happy childhood.